Summit to me is about creating experiences for other people.
A place for youth voices to be heard, and also it just gives us an experience that we wouldn't normally have in the classroom. So it means going out of your comfort zone and out of the ordinary to learn about history.
Appreciating history and nature and culture, and fighting for what we're passionate about, and learning about these places and advocating so that they stay around and can be improved.
Making connections to the lives that people lived in these places and learning how we can stand up for those places.
So you guys are going to have an opportunity to learn a little bit about archaeology here and hopefully take some of that knowledge with you and advance on those themes as you continue your week here.
A lot of this stuff falls under food in containers, because that was just the main focus of the culture at the time. And then we had the materials as shelter.
This culture is very similar to other cultures.
This is an effective hunting tool, and this hunting tool was used for thousands of years kind of all over the world. But at some point, this hunting tool came along, right? And so, do we think that this table might kind of represent that time when they switched from using one hunting technology to a newer one that's a little bit better? You guys remember which time periods used in Atlatl to hunt?
Archaic, early Pueblo.
Archaic and the early farmers, right? They switched to another technology right around 500 AD, and what was that? Bow and arrow. This was around for thousands of years prior to that, though, and was a really, really useful hunting tool. These are found all over the world, so we've actually identified atlatls on every continent except for Antarctica and Africa.
That turkey's dead!
Oh, somebody almost hit it.
So this is a corn garden. It's a dry corn garden, which means they don't come out and water it. They leave all the watering to rain. And they're trying to make it as the same way that the Anasazi people used to. So they actually had some Hopi Indians come out and help them figure out where they were going to plant things.
What I saw is a lot of artifacts, and it's closed in with tons of wood, and the wood that was used is supposed to last longer than pine. And it was supposed to fit like 6 to 8 people, and it looked pretty small, but it's kind of spacious.
We want to preserve the wildlife the way it was back then and the way it's evolving now in the Park Service. So we want to limit our impact on the wildlife that's here in the park and just allow it to be the way it was.
When we're here, these aren't just, ruins or empty spaces, but to some of the modern Pueblo descendants, these places are regarded as still very active and living. Like their memory, their history, they're places where their ancestors lived and died and even are still buried. So first of all, we're in the plaza, and the plaza area, big open space within the community. It'd be a great place for everyday living, working, communal things, gatherings.
These are the pretty good kivas, and they were part of this upper house that some people look at and think of it as possibly what would be called a great house. There were two people, an architect and a guy that takes aerial photography, who created a image that kind of shows a 3D image of the village.
It's quite interesting to see it just out in nature.
Yeah, it's the coiling method. So
not what I would have expected from this kind of sort of uninteresting looking landscape at first look.
Showing the children this place is like a step back in time before a lot of the classic archaeological sites that we conceive of part of the Park Service today were excavated and stabilized for the public. So in some ways they get a different sense of landscape, a different sense of what these sites contained before they were dug up and made into contemporary sites for visitors to come see.
All through the Montezuma County area, all through the valley here, many people were living for many thousands of years. So this little site that we have over here is known as Dominguez Pueblo. We're going to be going to Escalante Pueblo, and those were named for the Spanish explorers who came through this area in 1776. They were the first European Americans to notice that these sites looked a lot like the way Pueblo people were living at that time in 1776 along the Rio Grande River. Artifacts are anything that are made or modified by a human. And it's sometimes through these artifacts that we learn about the past. Because, for example, these Pueblo people had no way of writing it down. This is a kiva. It is an underground round room, typically round, not always, but this one is pretty much round. This is much larger than your normal everyday kiva.
I really want to get your help to help answer some questions about how we can ensure that this museum and the exhibits that we have here are still relevant to our audiences, and that we really think about engaging youth, and how do we think about different applications to continue to ensure that we're relevant to all ages.
How can this museum better connect with you? And I said that one of the things that they could do is add QR codes to provide additional information and interactive activities.
I'm really into posting on social media all the time, and I always, whenever there's a location tag or something that I can use when I've been in a certain location, because I'm always taking photos wherever I go, and I always want to share it with other people. And so a lot of places don't have location tags, so then I just have to use whatever city we're in, which kind of limits it. But if there is some sort of tag, because then more people use it on Instagram and Facebook.
In order to learn about the cultures, it would be awesome to have a lot more sensory stuff, so the sounds of birds or wind or stuff, whatever it sounded like at the time.
I just want to thank you for your input, because I really value what you guys have to say and your perspective. And I think you probably already noticed that one person doesn't have all the audiences. It takes a village, it takes an entire community and a great team to truly be able to work forward and move mountains.
We're here at the Cortez Cultural Center.
We're here to have a taste of Cortez for dinner.
And we're here to see Native American dances.
Go kids! We want to see it happen, and we're excited to have you here. We're excited to hear your voices.
Today's a good day.
More proud than I do.
Hello.
I like to say the Park Service is in the future business. We welcome you here today. We want you to enjoy yourself here today, but we also protect the park so that future generations, your kids and your grandkids and so on, can also enjoy the park. Everything you see here can be impacted either in a positive way or a negative way. You're the future, these are your parks. You're going to be, some of you will be working for the agency hopefully, and some of you will be in charge of parks like this. Go out and make sure your voices are heard.
Guys, what was your wow moment with either Yucca or Mesa this morning?
We were able to see like the great kivas at Yucca House. It was absolutely amazing because you were able to see what it looks like untouched, which is something that you don't typically get to see anymore. And it just makes you feel a lot more connected to like how they were and the earth around them.
It's really just being able to see almost a vista like this, even though it's not at such a high altitude, it's a vista so that you can see almost 50 miles in any direction. And understanding that when they were there at that point, they were able to see the same view, and although there wasn't a reservoir, there was still that same vista, and they were able to see and communicate with essentially tribes 100 miles away within hours of each other.
The land looked small, and the name Yucca House gave me the impression that it was just going to be one room and, you know, a couple of other rooms maybe. And then when we actually got there and they were explaining it could have housed like 400 to 600 people, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this place is huge. It has so many different artifacts and sherds and arrowheads. And it was just a really big wow moment for me because I figured out that everything is not what it seems when you look at the pictures in the textbooks, but when you actually go and experience it, it's a really big thing.
1, 2, 3. Oh no, that's like weak. Seriously? 1, 2, 3.
You're going to go back in time on this tour. You're going to use all that cool knowledge and skills that you now have in your toolkit throughout this entire tour. Welcome to Cliff Palace. What you guys are looking at is the largest cliff dwelling in the Americas. Do you think these people had a community? Yeah. It's this idea that you can work together to achieve something that will bring people to look at 835 years later. That's an awesome one. Living inside these cliff dwellings provided an opportunity to have protection, not from people, not from their communities above, but from the elements. So this society worked together, and they did have different roles, but those roles all came together to make this. What's a role you guys would like to play in this society? Think about it. You guys have done some pretty cool stuff these last few days. Do we have people who make textiles? Do we have people who are leaders? Do we have people who build? The more we learn about where we come from, our ancestors, those individuals who came before us, the more we realize we're not so different. I have people that are descendant communities come on my tour sometimes, and they always spend just a little extra time right here. Think of some place that's special to you. I want us to give thanks for whatever you're thankful for before the rest of the tour gets in here. So on 3, we're gonna yell as loud as we can and give thanks. all right? And I want you to listen. And as you're listening, I want you to imagine this whole village giving thanks during a green corn ceremony, harvesting the crops. Thanks have echoed throughout this canyon since these people were living here. When you guys go to your national parks, don't just go and look at what's on the outside. Put your story to it. What are you going to do whenever you leave this awesome experience? You go back to your community. What are you going to do to make it better? Challenge yourself.
I think it's amazing. Like I've told Ms. Pritzloff, when I was like 9, I saw a magnet on my grandma's fridge of Mesa Verde, and I've seen it like a lot because I've gone to her house like so many times. And now to actually be here in the flesh and blood, it's surreal.
Visitation to the Park Service is not necessarily representative of the population of the United States. And so one of the questions that we're trying to, or challenges that we're trying to overcome and work with the Park Service on is, how do we make the parks more accessible to all audiences, underserved communities?
It seemed really well fit for like an outdoor classroom experience. So it is already happening, but just bringing kids out, preferably from like a young age, and continuing that throughout, and probably adding some different parks and different experiences and different themes in there.
Getting involved with public schools really, I think, is one of the most efficient things to get involved with the Park Service.
I made an acronym and the word is MESA, and it is Make Everyone Sacred Aware, and I think we can use technology to enhance this acronym, because what that means to me is to make everyone aware that this is sacred land. It means important things to other people, and that we should respect it. We should respect everyone who lived in it and are still thinking about it, reliving the tales, telling the stories through oral history, and I think we could use technology to enhance that.
So with video games, you could include national parks or sites in a video game in some way, or you could do like Minecraft and have, like, I built a pencil fort in Minecraft, walk around it and all that stuff. Like, you could have your different sites at all the visitor centers, or even just as a downloadable thing so people can at home go in their Minecraft and walk around all these sites and be building out their own.
There's rooms in all of these pueblos that public cannot access and probably will never be able to access, but in a VR experience they could be able to do that, and that would definitely add a little bit to that experience.
Having real conversations and putting out podcasts where people tell their stories and having genuine human conversations where you make eye contact with people, that's the only way that we can truly get this out. It's not just through social media.
So I just want to say welcome. You all are now entering the Chapin Historic District. So really what we're going to be doing today is exploring the Chapin Mesa Archaeological Museum, which is among the very first museums in the National Park System.
When you hold podcast, yeah, it's in the podcast. When you hold your phone up to it, basically, it'll have these guys moving. Yeah, it'll show what we did back then.
Everything is behind glass. There's not anything that's not behind glass, and I mean, it's so easy to have like a faux thing, like faux human hair that were clothes of the ancient Puebloan people, and ancient ropes that are faux, and like all those sort of things you could feel.
Keeping that idea and that structure, but just simply adding technology in places where it's needed to make it more interactive, or adding hands-on activities to make it more interactive it would help the museum, but it would also preserve that historic thing that's been around for 100 years.
This is a home that made family. This was a home where people lived, loved, grew, and lost. You're looking at an authentic, the original pit house. You're looking at the foundation of the Puebloan world. These folks right here were using an atlatl dart. They started to cut down these trees to be able to provide for their way of life. From the last ice age, they were the first people to settle down, stay put, first people to plant, and they were the first people to create a lifestyle that would lead to what you guys saw today at Cliff Palace. What additional interpretive techniques and/or technology could we use to help make these sites come alive?
Having more explanation as to like what kivas were used for and like what the room blocks were actually meant for, and just certain characteristics in the kivas and stuff, and how they all worked with the climate and how they kind of ran their life.
Sun Temple is basically what we call a D-shaped structure, which does not tell you a lot about it, right? It's this D-shaped structure that does not really have an obvious use or purpose. And this is in a pretty prominent place in the Cliff Palace community. So this one is not within a village, but it is within a community. So Cliff Palace is nearby. You guys saw the other cliff dwellings, Oak Tree House, Fire Temple. This was probably some type of a special use structure. It could have been public architecture. It could have been used for ritual or ceremony. You asked that question, and it's possible that it was, but we don't know for certain.
I always say that the contribution that our forefathers made was priceless, and it still is priceless, and it's going to be priceless into the future. So it gives me pride that our forefathers were smart enough to leave their footprint and leave their evidence of the places that they came through. There needs to be a sharing of knowledge and information. There has to be a grandfather and a granddaughter, grandson communicating and learning from each other's.
More, 5, 6, 7, 8, meet me at the Golden Gate. You can't go like that.
Thank you for being in this very special place this morning at Mesa Verde National Park.
You know, it's very important that we have young people to take the torch and save our history.
One thing that, like, in my answer I wanted to push was, like, programs or jobs for actual Native people to share their stories and their, like, culture with people.
Making the park a classroom, but also making the classroom a park. So we would like to do this by incorporating tech into the classrooms, so making AR or VR experiences online that the kids can log on to.
We have audio tours or podcasts where we have natives tell their stories, or even talking about volunteering. It gives somebody who's listening to it an actual connection to that park, and I think that's when people will start to preserve it, when they feel like they have an emotional and spiritual connection.
And I heard one of the upperclassmen say that the more well-known parks should start advertising some of the smaller parks, and I agree with that.
So there could be a screen in front of all of the dioramas that show like a 3D model of each diorama, and you can click on it and click on certain features of the diorama.
With the augmented reality, we could have some kind of Pokemon Go, you know, that was a big thing a few years ago, type thing with Yucca House, where you could see like actual room blocks and kivas with your phone if you put it up to where the little hills are.
We've been talking a lot about how technology should not replace the experience, which is very true, and we really want to just hammer home the point that we should be using technology to provide experiences when they cannot be achieved otherwise.
I'm going to ask you guys up here to do me one favor. Take a second and look around at the faces of the people in the first 3 rows. See them all? That's how we inspire the youth to help manage. You get summits just like this, you get them to come, and you get their opinion on how we can use this land.
I like the way you think. I like the way you articulated your points. I want to encourage you to stay true to what you believe in.
You guys, as the next generation coming up, you need to continue to share this message with your families, with your friends, with your classmates, and as you move up in the world, to continue to push for these values, because these are things that are important and these are things that keep these sites alive. So thank you for that.
Thank you, National Park Service!